We said that precautionary savings can impact consumption, right? If consumers decide that they need to save more, that means that they're going to consume less, right? For every extra dollar, you either consume it or you save it. So, how do households decide how much they need to save? Well, one possibility is that they look at sort of a target wealth level. Now, usually when we think about wealth, we think about the things that a household owns. And so, what that includes for most households is home equity, and so the difference between what the house is worth and the mortgage that you have on it, and some financial wealth. For most people, that is in the form of some 401k or something like that. But if you think about it, for most people, especially the younger you are, most of your actual wealth is your expected future earnings, right, from employment. And so if we include that, then we think about that as broad wealth, right? So that's home equity, financial wealth, and your expected future earnings. And then you might have some debt. And so here we have home equity and debt together is the value of the house. And then your broad wealth minus the debt is your net worth. So if households have a sort of general idea where they want that target broad wealth to be, then if something happens and their wealth changes, then they might start spending less and saving more. And so we can think of this as, what happened in the Great Depression. And so in the Great Depression, a number of things happened that affected wealth levels. So first of all, debt didn't shrink, right? And that's one of the things about debt is that it doesn't generally go away. Home equity values fell because the value of homes fell. Financial wealth fell because of the stock market crash. And expected future earnings fell because the unemployment rate went up. And so now it was more likely that you were going to be unemployed for longer, so your future earnings were lower. And so if all of those things fall, now people are saying, oh, well, my wealth is where I want it to be, so I am going to consume less and save more. And so precautionary savings goes up. So the housing market was really important for the last recession, and changes in those housing prices can affect consumption in a couple of different ways. One is through a change in household wealth. So as we said in the last video, when the housing bubble popped, people saw their equity shrink or even disappear, and so now they have less wealth than they thought. And it can also change via credit constraints. So one of the things that fueled the housing bubble was the fact that credit constraints got lower and lower. More and more people could borrow more and more easily at lower and lower interest rates. But after the financial crisis, banks stopped lending money so easily. And so now the credit constraints went way up. And also, a lower house value meant that your equity was lower, and so you couldn't borrow against the house so easily. And that's important too in different countries to different levels, right? It's easier to borrow against home equity in the United States than it is, for instance, in Germany or France or Spain. What about investment spending? So far, when we thought about investment spending, we just said, all right, investment doesn't depend on current income, so we're just going to add it to consumption for our aggregate demand curve. But of course, investment spending will depend a lot on the interest rate and how that interest rate is related to the owner's discount rate, right? Now, who's the owner? Well, in a small single proprietor shop, that can be pretty clear. In a large firm, that's a little less clear, right? It's the shareholders and the people that represent those shareholders. So it's sort of their discount rate. And then it's also the net profit rate on investment, right? So if you decide to invest and you earn profits, what is that profit rate going to be? So if your discount rate is higher than both the interest rate and the profit rate, then you say, all right, well, I just want to consume this extra income, right? So I got extra income, I got profits, I got dividends, I'm going to consume them. If the interest rate is higher than the discount rate, but the discount rate is higher than the profit rate, then you're going to save that extra income and or repay debts, right? So you just put it in the bank, you'll earn interest, or you'll pay off your debts. If the profit rate is higher, right, whether it's at home or abroad, then you're going to invest it, right? You want to earn those extra profits because the profit rate is so high. And so a lower interest rate, the lower is the interest rate, more investment is more likely, right? Because it makes those projects more profitable. So if the rate of profit goes up, right, holding R constant, so if firms believe that they can earn more for any given investment project, then again, they will invest more. Also, if the risk of appropriation goes down, right, so if it's more likely that you'll get to keep whatever you earn, the president's brother-in-law is not going to come and take it, then that can also increase investment, right? It's less of a risk in a place like the United States, but more of a risk in some developing countries. Keep in mind that those are supply side effects, the supply of investment. Change in interest rate is more of a demand side effect. So let's look at some examples. So let's imagine that we have two firms here and they each have three projects and they have different expected profit rates. So for firm one, the expected profit rate is 6% for the first project, about 4.25% for the second project, and about 1% for the third project. For firm two, it's 4% for the first project, 3% for the second project, and 2% for maybe a little over 2% for the third project. So when the interest rate goes down, say from 5% to 2%, now all of a sudden more projects are expected to be profitable, right? So if it's 5%, only this one project from firm one, firm A, is expected to be profitable. But if it goes down to 2%, then both for project one and project two should be profitable for firm A, and perhaps even all three projects will be profitable for firm B. And so that means that the total investment, if we just put the projects side by side from highest expected profit to lowest expected profit, a fall in the interest rate will increase investment. Also, if the profit rate goes up, right? So if we increase from 5 to 6%, from 4.25 to 6%, 5.5%, if all of those profit rates go up, then we would expect investment to go up as well. So that could be because there are lower costs for the investment project. It could be because there are lower taxes on profits, or it could be because there's less competition. Although I have to say, what we've seen recently is that there's been perhaps less competition in the United States and profit levels have gone up, but we haven't seen that increase in investment. Sometimes competition is what spurs companies to increase their investment because they're worried they'll go out of business if they don't invest. So what does that give us? Well, it gives us an aggregate investment function where we have the interest rate and the profit rate on the vertical axis and the amount of investment, you can think of that in terms of dollars or percent of GDP on the horizontal axis. And so we could see, if the interest rate goes down, then we expect investment to go up. But in practice, we find that it's not very sensitive to interest rates. In fact, the piece of investment that's most sensitive to interest rates is residential investment, building new houses. And that's because most houses are funded by 30-year mortgages. And a 30-year loan can change the payments drastically depending on what the interest rate is, whereas businesses don't often take that 30-year time horizon. On the other hand, if firms get a higher expected profit rate, right, that can shift out the curve. And so shift factors can be more important than interest rate factors for investment.